Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at, well, a really massive moment in history, the Battle of Hastings, 1066.
Yeah, absolutely massive. It wasn't just another battle. It fundamentally changed England forever, really.
It did, and we're basing this on a short YouTube video we found, which does a great job outlining the key events and, crucially, the impact.
Exactly. It hits the main points very clearly.
So our mission today is basically to unpack those points from the video, understand those turning points, and really grasp the lasting consequences.
Sounds good. Where should we start the background?
Yeah, let's set the scene. England in 1066. Because it wasn't exactly stable, was it?
Not at all. You had King Edward the Confessor dying with no clear heir. That instantly creates a power vacuum, a big one.
Right. And into that vacuum step several contenders. A real clash of ambitions.
First, you've got Harold Godwinson, powerful English earl, probably the most powerful man in England besides the king.
And he gets the backing of the Witan, this sort of Anglo-Saxon council.
That's right. They chose him, crowned him king pretty quickly after Edward's death. Seems straightforward, maybe? But no.
Because then you have William of Normandy.
William the Bastard, later the Conqueror.
Yeah.
He claims Edward had actually promised him the throne years before.
Okay, so a prior promise.
And adding another layer, he claims Harold himself swore an oath, maybe back in 1064, to support William's claim. So, double trouble for Harold.
So right away, it's messy. Two strong claims, completely at odds.
Very messy. And just to make things really interesting.
Oh, tell me. Vikings.
You got it. Harold Hardrada, the king of Norway. He figures, hey, why not me? And invades the north of England.
Wow. So Harold Godwinson, the newly crowned king, immediately faces an invasion.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And to his credit, he acts fast, marches his army all the way north, meets Hardrada near York.
At Stamford Bridge. And wins, right? A huge victory.
A decisive victory,
Yeah.
Hardrada is killed, the Viking invasion is crushed,
Yeah.
An incredible military feat.
But there's always a but.
Always. The cost was immense. His army marched hundreds of miles, fought a brutal battle. They were exhausted.
And then what happens?
Almost immediately, like days later, news arrives.
Yeah.
William has landed on the south coast in Sussex.
No way. That timing is just unbelievable.
It's insane. He has to turn his knackered army around and march all the way south again, hundreds more miles, to face a fresh, well-equipped Norman army.
So that sets the stage for Hastings, October 14th, 1066. Senlac Hill.
Precisely. Harold gets there first, takes the high ground. Smart move. His army, mostly infantry, forms the shield wall.
Ah, the famous shield wall. Tough nut to crack.
Absolutely. It was this interlocking line of shields, very strong defensively, designed to repel cavalry charges, arrows, the works.
And facing them, William's Normans, a different kind of army.
Very different, more diverse. They had infantry, yes, but also lots of archers and, crucially, cavalry. Yeah. Knights on horseback, a combined arms approach.
So we've got this static defense versus a more mobile, varied attack force, a real contrast in styles.
Exactly. And that difference turned out to be, well, pretty important.
Okay, so the battle starts. Around 9 a.m., the video mentions. What were the initial Norman moves?
They started with archers, trying to soften up the shield wall.
Yeah.
Then came the infantry assaults, followed by cavalry charges, trying to punch through.
But the shield wall held.
It did. For hours, apparently. The video stresses how effective it was. The Normans just couldn't break it. Repeated attacks, but the Saxons stood firm. Fierce fighting.
Must have been incredibly frustrating for William.
You'd imagine so. But then comes a turning point. The video highlights these feigned retreats.
Right. Where the Normans pretend to run away?
Exactly. Whether it was a planned tactic from the start or something they improvised when the direct assaults failed. Well, historians debate that.
But it worked.
It seems so. Some of the English soldiers, maybe inexperienced feared levies, not the professional housecarls, possibly thought the Normans were genuinely fleeing.
So they broke ranks, left the safety of the wall to chase them.
That's the idea. They surge forward, down the hill, and suddenly they're exposed. The shield wall is compromised.
And the Norman cavalry could then turn around and cut them down.
Precisely. Exploit those gaps, break the cohesion of the line. It seems this happened a few times during the long day. A really clever, if brutal, tactic.
Okay, so the shield wall is starting to weaken. What else did William do? The video mentions archers again.
Yes, later in the day, as things were perhaps becoming more desperate, William apparently ordered his archers to adapt. Instead of firing directly at the wall.
Aim higher, over the top.
Exactly. Arching shots, dropping arrows down behind the shield wall onto the men packed there. Much harder to defend against.
Nasty. And this leads us towards the end and the fate of King Harold.
Yeah, the climax of the battle, around dusk. And this is where things get a bit murky, as the video notes. How did Harold actually die?
The image everyone knows is the Bayeux Tapestry one, right? Arrow in the eye.
That's the iconic one. Instantly recognizable. Brutal.
But the video says there's another account.
There is. Another contemporary source suggests he was actually hacked down by a group of Norman knights who broke through the line. Maybe both happened. Who knows? Arrow wound, then finished off.
Either way, the king is dead.
And that effectively, is the end. The death of the king, especially in that era, was a shattering blow to morale.
The army just collapsed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The video describes Harold's personal guard, the housecarls, fighting on bravely around his body. Real last stand stuff.
Loyal to the end.
Fiercely loyal, highly trained, but the bulk of the army, the fort, the militia, they broke and fled.
And the Norman cavalry pursued them?
Relentlessly. The video calls it a brutal rout. The battle was decisively over. William had won.
So victory on the field. But that's just step one, isn't it? How did William actually become King of England?
Good point. Winning the battle doesn't automatically mean you control the country. According to the video, he marched towards London. There was some resistance, but eventually the remaining English leaders submitted.
And he's crowned.
Yep. Christmas Day, 1066. In Westminster Abbey, William the Conqueror is now officially King William I of England.
But then comes the hard part, right? Consolidating that power, holding on to the kingdom.
Absolutely. And the video highlights how he did this systematically. A key element was building castles everywhere.
Like the Tower of London, the video mentions that specifically.
Exactly. The Tower of London is perhaps the most famous example. These weren't just forts. They were symbols of Norman domination, centers of administration, projecting power into the local area.
And he replaced the locals in charge.
He did. He systematically stripped the Anglo-Saxon nobles of their lands and titles and gave them to his Norman followers. A complete change at the top of society.
A new ruling class.
Entirely new. And this had huge long-term consequences, as the video points out.
Yeah.
Things that shaped England fundamentally.
Like the language.
Oh, definitely. Huge influence. French became the language of the court, of law, of administration. It blended with Old English over centuries to create the language we speak now. You know, so many English words have French origins because of this.
It's fascinating how you can see those layers, like beef from the Norman French boeuf, while the animal is still the Anglo-Saxon cow.
Exactly. That's a classic example. And it wasn't just language. Society itself was restructured along Norman lines. Feudalism.
Right, that whole system of lords, vassals, land for service.
That hierarchical structure really defined medieval England.
Yeah.
And then there's the architecture. They built big.
Grand cathedrals, the video mentions Durham Cathedral.
Impressive structures, again demonstrating Norman power, piety, and prominence. They were here to stay.
So really, the video's conclusion is that Hastings wasn't just a battle, it was transformative.
Completely transformative. It created this new hybrid Anglo-Norman culture and identity. It fundamentally altered England's path, its politics, its society, its language, everything, really.
A single day that reshaped a nation. It's quite something to think about.
It really is. The video does a good job of conveying that immense significance.
Okay, well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Battle of Hastings, guided by that source video. What a pivotal moment.
Truly pivotal.
And it leaves us with that question the video poses at the end, doesn't it, for you to think about. Was the Norman victory a heroic achievement, a feat of military genius and determination, or was it ultimately a brutal conquest?
Yeah, that's the lingering question. Conquest or achievement? Maybe elements of both. It's definitely worth pondering.
Indeed. And if this has sparked your interest, there's so much more to explore about the Norman conquest and its legacy. A really fascinating period.
Absolutely. Well worth digging deeper if you get the chance.